Cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If this is your first time tuning in, we're here streaming every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST. With new recipes, those are coming out every Friday. So today we are doing a Japanese curry, or it's kind of a Japanese curry still. That's loosely based off of my mom's Japanese curry, which is actually technically a Chinese curry. But the way that I've changed it has been adapted to use a whole bunch of stuff that kind of falls somewhere in between. And the more that I've kind of researched what's the difference between a Japanese and Chinese curry, which I'm sure lots of people are wondering, the more that I've discovered that there's not really that many differences. It's mostly just like where some of those ingredients come from. So we're going to talk a bit about that today. But the version that I'm basing this off of comes from my mom's cookbook, which is for sure Cantonese. But we've been using a whole bunch of things that come from Japanese cuisine, including white miso paste, which is my favorite ingredient because it gives it a nice bit of like extra umami that you generally won't come across in most curries. So we're going to get into that in a bit. If you're looking for the recipes, those always live over on my YouTube channel. So if you're watching on Reddit, that would be the YouTube channel at the bottom of the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, it's the channel you're already on. You're already there. Good job. Lots of fun content living over on the YouTube channel, including all of the recipes, but in addition to the recipe videos, that's also where the concurrent live stream lives. So there's a whole list of everything that I'm going to be live streaming over the next couple of weeks. So if you want to find out what I'm going to be streaming next, that all is over there. Lots of fun stuff going on over there. I also like to do polls over on the YouTube channel and kind of get a feel for like what people want to cook next. I've also started doing polls for like so next Thursday or this Thursday coming up, we're going to be doing fried rice that's going to be based off of ingredients that you guys pick. Been doing polls over on the YouTube channel for what we want to put into that fried rice, and then we're going to cook it on Thursday and see what happens. So if you're interested in stuff like that, definitely hop over to the YouTube channel and check out what's going on over there. Lots of fun content like that popping up. Okay, so starting off for our curry, I'm beginning, as with most of the things that I cook, with that was 4 cloves of crushed and minced garlic, followed by about 1 inch or about a tablespoon of finely minced ginger. So you'll notice that with the garlic, I didn't do very much with it, other than give it a really good crush with the flat side of the knife, and then run real quick through it with basically a rough chop. And that's essentially all you really need to do with the garlic, because it's so delicate that once you crush it, pretty much just starts to fall apart. With the ginger, though, I do have to do the fine mince because it is a little bit more durable. Watch your fingers, yeah. So lots of people ask or worry about that, mostly because lots of times I have a habit of looking up at the camera while I'm chopping. So if you're wondering how I do that, it's not because I'm like super careless with my fingers. It's because I'm using the guide knuckle technique. So if you have your fingers down, so my right hand, watching my right hand curled in this way, and the knife is pressed up against my knuckle, which means that I don't actually have to look at it to know where the knife is. The knife is against my knuckle, so I can look up, can look that way, look that way. All I really need to know is that the knife is pressed up against my knuckle. As long as it is, I'm not going to cut anything. Or the worst thing that will happen, and I actually have done this many, many times, is I've cut my knuckle before. And then you'll get like a real nasty scrape on your knuckle, kind of like running your knuckle against like the sidewalk. Except instead of the sidewalk, you're running it against a really, really sharp knife. But you're not going to cut your finger off. Worst thing that you'll do is probably just like scrape off a good chunk of skin from your knuckle. And that's why you'll notice, you probably can't see it on Reddit, but in the resolution on YouTube, you can see on my knuckle right here, there's a whole bunch of scars. That's because I have cut my knuckle many, many times. I think I've even done it on camera at least once or twice. But yes, to answer your question, as long as you're using a good claw technique, you're not going to cut your fingers. Yeah. Hermina, how's it going? Happy Tuesday, yeah. The YouTube is great, yeah, it's because it's in landscape. Yeah, I've heard that a lot. Thank you, Hermina, that's a good tip. I've heard that the YouTube channel looks a little bit better in landscape, so I know that my brother likes to watch the YouTube channel on TV, so he puts it on the TV. And then it looks a little bit better on TV. Keyline Lover, yeah, hello, how's it going? How's everyone doing? So, that's my garlic and my ginger. The ginger, I did a fine mince on. The garlic, I just really crushed it, and that was about all I had to do. Let's do our onion. Yeah. Oh, you tried General Tso's chicken? Yeah, that's cool. I actually did a recipe for a General Tso's chicken. That was, ooh, man, that was a long time ago. I think that was back in like September or so. But yeah, if you haven't found that, that's definitely, the recipe I did for that General Tso's chicken is really interesting. That was actually part of the Chinese American hack series that I've been doing, where I've been like hacking a lot of foods, basically from Panda Express. I hacked a whole bunch of recipes from Panda Express. And I think it was the very first one that I did was for General Tso's chicken, which is really interesting because Panda Express doesn't have a General Tso's chicken if you look close. They had a General Tso's chicken back in like 2017, I think. And then they discontinued it because it was not very popular. But I did a real rough hack on it, and then what I did is I ended up reproducing it without all of like the American qualities of the General Tso's chicken, which is really, really interesting, because General Tso's chicken is basically just American chicken, and so the second version is really interesting because it has a bunch of stuff from Chinese cuisine that you almost never will find, definitely not in a General Tso's chicken, but you also probably won't find it in most like stir fries, because a lot of those ingredients are more commonly found in noodle dishes. So that's a fun one. You have to check out the WooTube. Yeah, I'm gonna go find it. There it is. Yeah, that was a fun recipe. I'm pretty sure that was the very first recipe that I did for the Chinese American hack series. Yeah, cool. Yeah, let me know if you try it. It's a fun one. I'm pretty sure we have it. We're going to be doing that live soon too. I think it's in the schedule soon. All right, so right now I'm dicing up. This is going to be half of a sweet white onion. You can use really any kind of onion you want. You could use a yellow onion if you need to. You could even use a purple onion. That would probably go fine too. Or if you really want, you could probably even use a shallot. That would even taste really good too. I'm doing, this is like a large dice on our onions. What's most important about the onions, sorry, that's the rice. I haven't had a Zordorishi, it sings when you're done. What's most important about our onions today is that we're going to be putting them in really, really late. They're going to be like done in the last like 3 minutes of our wok fry or like our slow cook. And that's because if you put onions into a slow cook way too early, what will happen is it will just literally disappear because onions are mostly water. So if you put your onions in really, really early with your other veggies like your potatoes and your carrots, what will happen is they will just shed out all of that water and then you'll be left with like the empty cell structure of an onion, which is not going to taste like anything. You might get like a little bit of onion flavor, but you're definitely not going to get any toothsome qualities from your onions. So we're going to put those onions in. They're going to go in like at the very within the last 3 minutes of our wok fry, and that way they will retain some sort of actual physical presence in our curry today. Yeah, oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for looking it up. The goat, yeah, General Tso's chicken, the goat Chinese dish, yeah. I would say is like General Tso's chicken is probably like one of the like most classic Chinese American dishes in like Chinese American cuisine, which is like really, really cool because like a lot of the things that are done in a General Tso's chicken, they don't come from Chinese food. They come from American food, which is really, really interesting because like how did those techniques even end up in Chinese food? So like fried chicken, for example. Fried chicken is not a thing in Chinese food, not really at least. Definitely the way that General Tso's chicken is done, that way of frying chicken is not done in Chinese food, especially not using flour. I don't think I've ever seen flour come up in like traditional Chinese cooking. Maybe some other people have, but generally when I see the use of starch, you would see potato starch or corn starch. So the use of flour, like you would do the way that you would bread most General Tso's chicken, that's definitely an American thing, which is super interesting. So cool. Billy Key chicken. No, I haven't heard of that. I'll have to look it up. Yeah, I'll have to look it up. That sounds really, really interesting. I'm always super interested to learn more about especially like really regional Chinese American foods. So like Someone told me recently, I'm pretty sure I should have looked this up. I said we were talking about it yesterday, but someone told me recently about an egg foo young sandwich. Then I think it was from St. Louis. I think it was from St. Louis. And it's essentially an egg foo young patty that's put in between two pieces of white bread, which sounds really crazy. And it's like probably the most American thing that I have ever heard about Chinese cuisine. Yeah. All right, so right now I'm chopping up. These are, that's about, I think, 2 or 3 carrots here. I'm trying to make a bit of extra leftovers, so there's going to be a little bit more carrots than we probably need. What's most important about carrots is based on the way that they grow, the bottom of the carrot's going to be a lot smaller than the top of the carrot, obviously because the carrot is fruit-shaped, which means that you have to chop it very specifically to make sure that you get even sizes and shapes of your carrot. So I did a pretty good job. Maybe not as good as I could have, but you'll notice that this is from the bottom of the carrot, this is from the top of the carrot. We want these things to be as close to evenly sized as possible. Otherwise, if they're like oddly shaped, they're also going to cook unevenly. So in the wok fry, or in the long cook especially, you're going to end up with those. Either one of 2 things will happen, probably most likely those small bits and pieces are eventually just going to disappear into the wok fry. Or what will happen is you'll pull it out just in time to make sure that those small pieces are okay, and then the large pieces are going to be undercooked. Next up I'm doing, this is just some russet potatoes. You could use sweet potatoes, or you could use really any kind of potato for this. But in my opinion, I also think that it's one of the most important parts, or most definitive things about a Japanese curry, is that it contains root vegetables like carrots and potatoes. So I'm using russets today. It's mostly because that's what I have. But use whatever you've got. So, super important while I peel these. I don't have a camera over my sink, but I will show you. While we're peeling our potatoes, we always want to make sure that the russet potatoes stay submerged in water. Otherwise, what will happen is that they will start oxidizing. And russet potatoes oxidize crazy quickly. They will probably start oxidizing within less than 5 minutes, I would say. In under 5 minutes, those potatoes will start oxidizing. And then they'll I think first they'll start turning brown, and then they'll turn pink. And then you'll have weird colored potatoes. It won't actually change the way that it tastes, but it's definitely going to affect the color and presentation of your potatoes. So if you're trying to make sure that your potatoes don't turn weird colors, make sure that you keep them, while you're chopping them, keep them in water. Otherwise, you're going to have pink potatoes. All right, so we're gonna start chopping some potatoes here. Oh yeah, it's slightly like General Tso's chicken. I would definitely be down to try and figure out something like that. Oh, you were making fries from scratch and you had to soak it? Yeah, for sure. You want to keep those in, yeah. That's like, yeah, actually that's what I've noticed is, so the soak, when you put them underwater, it does a couple of things. The first thing that it does is it stops it from oxidizing. That's really important if you're going to deep fry them, because you are for sure going to see the color of those potatoes if you're frying them. But also what it does is it will start shedding off and removing a lot of the original starch from your potatoes. So in our case, we definitely want to get that excess starch off, because if we don't remove that extra starch and it ends up in our wok fry, what's going to happen is your potatoes are going to start sticking together. So then you'll have like clumped up pieces of potato, which is not good, because we don't want these things to start sticking to each other. So if you've ever made hash browns, though, that is going to be a big problem when you're trying to make hash browns, because you actually do need that starch when you make hash browns. because it is how you bind those patties together. So if you've ever tried to rinse that starch off and then tried to make hash browns with potatoes, you'll probably find is that you end up with like, I compare them to like Denny's or IHOP hash browns, where like the hash browns, they're like crispy, but they're also like a little bit like crumbly, and the shreds sort of like start falling apart. And I have a feeling, I actually think that when you get them from like Denny's or IHOP, I think it's because they're making it from frozen potatoes, and that's why it has that texture. But really what that's a sign of is that the original starch that comes from the potatoes has been rinsed off already. So whenever I try and make hash browns and I soak them in water, and I lose that starch, it probably will end up with potatoes that are not going to bind together properly anymore. Which is not the end of the world, it's still totally edible, but you're not going to get those nice crispy like cakes of hash brown. The other solution that I have come across a lot, I've seen a lot of people doing this actually, is they'll like reserve the starch at the bottom of the potato bowl, and then like keep that starch and then add it back when you make those hash browns, which is a little bit backwards. Usually when I make hash browns, usually when I do my hash browns, I'll just try and like do it quickly enough where I won't have to keep it in water, because once you put it in water, then you lose the starch. So I just try and work fast, so I don't even have to bother with the soak. Cool. Oh yeah, everything I cut isn't so well proportioned. Yeah, that's one thing that I actually have started doing about my potatoes. So you'll notice that I'm cutting off the ends of my potatoes here. So this is like, I'm actually not going to eat this, so we're just throwing that in the drain. The reason that I'm doing that is because if you don't cut off that end, you're going to end up with like slightly smaller, craggly ends to your potatoes. So if you're making hash browns or if you're making home fries, that's actually okay. Because it will just end up a little bit crispier. But in our case, what's going to happen is it's just going to end up turning mushy. So by chopping off these little bits and pieces at the very, very end of our potato, we end up with like slightly more evenly shaped potatoes than what we would otherwise been able to do without removing them. And so we have these pieces of potato where they're roughly the same size. So this is from the end, this is from the middle, and they're looking close. They're closer. That's been like one of the biggest challenges that I have ever faced with potatoes, is trying to figure out how to get them in the same size. Okay, so I'm storing those. Those are over in water in my sink. I don't have a camera over my sink, but they're in water in my sink. And we're gonna let those sit there until we're ready to start cooking them. Ooh, slightly raw, sliced raw potato with a touch of salt. I guess that's basically what a potato chip is. I don't know. Maybe that actually probably sounds it would be fine. It might feel like it might be a little bit bland, but yeah. Right about the Denny's hash browns. You could taste it in the food. It's like loaded. I'm not sure about preservatives, but I know for sure it's like that. Those potatoes are coming from something frozen, and I think what they're doing is when it's frozen, it's coated in some maybe it's a preservative actually, and they coat it in something to keep it from like sticking together and like clumping, so that when you pull it out, they can pull it out in like proportioned sizes. But what that ends up doing is it just keeps the potatoes from binding when you fry them, which is why when you eat hash browns from places like Denny's and stuff, you get like those hash browns that are like weirdly separated and kind of like almost like steamed potato, which is a little weird. I've also learned that the real secret to making a good hash brown is just a whole lot of butter, or sometimes even lard. And that's how you, like, if you've ever had like griddle hash browns that are like made from like a real like legit like greasy spoon diner, it's made with like more butter and lard, or both, than you really want to know about. So I think I have actually cracked the secret behind how to make a good hash brown. but I'm just not going to do it. That just sounds so incredibly unhealthy. Cool. All right, so next up, I'm slicing up some chicken. On my to-do list is get a plastic cutting board so I don't have to cut chicken over my wooden cutting board anymore. But you'll notice that I'm leaving the fat on my chicken thigh. Lots of people ask why I don't remove the fat from my chicken thigh. Part of it is because I'm lazy and I don't feel like removing the fat. But the other part of it is that I actually think that that fat is going to be really, really important in our wok fry because it's going to give us some nice richness to the wok fry. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a flash cook on this chicken before we start our slow cook. So before throwing it in a pot like you would do with like a big like long cook. You would probably traditionally do it in like a Dutch oven, probably more commonly, or maybe a big stock pot. What we're going to do instead is we're going to cook this in a wok. So we're going to flash cook it in a wok, just like you would do any other wok stir fry. We're going to start with our garlic and ginger, and then we're going to wok fry our chicken. And then what we're going to do is after that we're going to put it on slow cook. So we're going to put down a wok ring, and then we're going to let that thing simmer for like 20 minutes or so. Which I feel like lots of people maybe don't realize, but a wok probably most commonly is associated with good like flash cooking, so really really quick, really high heat cooking. But it is actually also super common to use a wok for slow cooks too, which is what we're going to do today. All right. Cool. Yeah, there's usually some amount of vegetables that's added to it. Yeah, I don't know about it being healthy, but that's yeah. My mom always says that the way that wok fried veggies are cooked, you're frying all of the healthy qualities out of it anyway. But I don't know if that's actually true. Definitely, I would consider like this particular curry. This is definitely not like super healthy, but it's super hearty for sure. Probably has a lot of sodium in it, but otherwise I think outside of that sodium, I think it's relatively healthy. Black ring? No. No, not a black ring, a wok ring, so we can take a look. So over on my stove, this is my wok. My wok is a round bottom wok, which is why if you've ever seen me cooking before, you'll notice that my wok, it rolls around like this. And that's because at the bottom of the wok, it does not have a flat bottom, it is circular, which is why it rolls around. So usually what you will see wok chefs do, especially if they're cooking on a home chef cook, is they'll get a wok ring like this and they'll put that wok ring down. And then it keeps the thing in place so it's not rolling around anymore. I generally don't like stir frying with the wok ring down because it kind of makes it a little bit harder to toss with this thing here. So I started removing it when I cook wok fries home because it just seems to move around a little bit better. But you do have to be careful not to let it come too far off because it will absolutely slip right off of the stove, which I've done many times. So, which is why I say for slow cooks, super important to have that wok ring down, and then it won't kind of like move around. So it's really useful for those slow cooks. But for the first fry, I'm going to leave it off and do my flash fry without the wok ring. Cool. Anyway, I digress. Back to our chicken thigh. This is just some diced chicken. We're going to do a quick marinade on it. It's not going to be super complicated because the curry has a lot of things going on in it already. But this is going to be 4 tablespoons of soy sauce. And then half a teaspoon of white pepper. And then a pinch of kosher salt. And finally, half a teaspoon of cornstarch. So of the things that I just added to the marinade of my chicken, the cornstarch is by far the most important ingredient because it's not going to add any flavor. But what it's going to do is it's going to slow down the cooking time of the exterior of the chicken by about maybe like 45 seconds or so. So it's going to slow down that exterior cook just long enough so that the interior of the chicken can finish cooking. So that's really, really important in wok fries because when you're cooking on the high temperatures or high heats that you have in a wok fry, that chicken will absolutely overcook if you're not careful. So if you're trying to get that really, really crisp exterior with that really, really tender interior. That's how it's done in most wok fries. They coat that chicken, or most proteins, they coat it in a little bit of cornstarch so that it will slow down that exterior just long enough so that you can get a nice finished interior. So without that cornstarch, what you usually end up with probably one of two things. Either it will overcook on the exterior by the time that the interior is finished, and then you'll have like a really rubbery piece of chicken or a rubbery piece of beef. Either that, or you'll either undercook it, so it will be cooked to perfection on the exterior, but the interior is not going to be finished cooking, and then you'll have a raw piece of chicken. So really, really useful in this case because we're also going to be long cooking our chicken. So this is going to be in the wok for a super, super long time. Anyway. Cool. Guest appointment. Yeah, new tunes tonight. Yeah, relatively new. I think that the tune that came out, I think the tune that's playing right now, it came out a couple weeks ago. That's over on the Woo Cooks Beats channel. I should keep linking that. There's the Spotify. But yeah, that's the Tennessee Whiskey, the Tennessee Whiskey cover that I did. That's actually my buddy Jay singing. I don't think there's any vocals on that cover right now. But on the original cover, the one that's on Spotify, has my buddy Jay singing. It was a session that we recorded. I think it was back in like 2019, like early 2019. Way before COVID happened, and then it was like in my hard drive for like literally an entire year, and then I was really, really bored and missed playing music, so I remixed it, and then it turned into a lo-fi cover. But it was originally him playing acoustic guitar. All right, next up, I'm assembling the sauce of my wok cook here. I like doing this stuff off heat. If you've ever watched like street chefs do this sort of stuff, you'll probably see them do this stuff straight into the wok because it's a lot. If they're super, super familiar with the way that these things are cooked, they're not going to stop and taste anyway. But I love doing it off heat so we can take the opportunity to kind of like stop and like taste and see where we're at. Otherwise, you won't really know what it tastes like until you're done cooking, which is going to be fine in some cases, but in a lot of cases you might need to be adjusting, and if you're not careful, you won't actually know that you need to adjust. Next up, that was 2 tablespoons of mirin, which is a Japanese rice wine, and a single tablespoon of oyster sauce, which comes from the fermentation of oyster. So it has this nice fishy umami quality to it. And then last up is going to be a 1/4 cup of sake, so dry sake. If you can't find dry sake, I think the next best thing that I like to use is Shaoxing wine, which is dry cooking sherry. That's probably the closest American thing is dry cooking sherry. If you can't find either or any of those things, anything with a little bit of brightness will work. So I think in my mom's original recipe, it calls for white wine. I think was the original thing that it called for. I don't know that she was actually using white wine, but I know that the recipe from her recipe book called for white wine. And when I tried doing that, it came out really, really bland. So I actually don't think that's what she was using. On my to-do list to actually ask her how she made that curry. Rice wine, yes. So I added actually 2 different kinds of alcohol today. So the first one is Japanese mirin, which is, I guess, rice wine. So that's technically rice wine. No, it is definitely rice wine. So mirin is rice wine. And then sake, which is another kind of rice alcohol. I guess this is also rice wine. Depends how you define it. Both of which are very alcoholic and have a little bit of sweetness to it. So mirin, in particular, is very, very sweet. So we're going to get a lot of sugary qualities. In my opinion, I actually think you get more sweet qualities from mirin than you actually get alcoholic qualities. Whereas dry sake is mostly alcohol, so it's mostly brightness with a little bit of sweetness. So in the same way, I kind of compare it in my mind to white wine, or like a really, really like dry white wine. So like a really dry Chardonnay, for example, where you don't really get a lot of sweetness to it, but mostly what you're getting is a lot of brightness to it. So that's our sauce. The last thing that I'm going to add, which I think is maybe the most important ingredient of this whole dish, is going to be 2 tablespoons of white miso paste. And white miso or miso paste comes from the fermentation of soybeans. And it is very, very fermented. So this stuff has a whole bunch of umami in it. So for first thing that we want to remember is use this really, really sparingly because it is super, super pungent. And if you're not careful, it will absolutely start overpowering a dish. So we're going to use 2 tablespoons for, this is probably going to be like 4 to 5 servings of curry and 2 whole tablespoons. The other important thing to remember about miso paste is that it is very, very solid. So it has a very solid quality about it. Unlike soy sauce, which is very loose, which means that we want to make sure that that stuff breaks down before it gets into our wok fry. Because if we don't break it down first, you're going to have weird clumps of miso paste. Sometimes it will stick to things in the curry. So it will might stick to a potato, and then you won't have any miso paste except for that one piece of potato. So we want to make sure that that's all nice and broken down before it gets into our wok fry. Sesame seed oil, yeah, totally. I use sesame seed oil. I use sesame oil a lot. I have not been using it in this particular curry. I just don't think it probably would go well. I didn't find that it needed it, although it would probably taste good. I use sesame oil in a lot of recipes, though, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, like an octopus. Yeah, I guess I am doing a lot of things. Yeah. I guess I've been streaming so often that I don't really even think about it anymore. I definitely notice that I cook a lot slower when I'm streaming, though, so that's definitely a thing. Sarah, you need to see me make hash browns. Yeah, that's for sure. That needs to happen for sure. And then I gotta start making some hash browns. Ooh, yeah. So most importantly, the whole reason that we're doing this off heat right now is so that we can taste it. So taste it and then adjust, see what it needs, and then add it if it needs something. Mine needs a little bit of salt and a little bit more soy sauce. I frequently find that I need a little bit more soy sauce, mostly because when you see me cooking, this is actually true for almost every recipe that I've ever written. When you see me using regular soy sauce, what I'm actually using is low sodium soy sauce, which has a little bit less salt in it and is a little bit less concentrated. So super, super often you might see me adding a little bit more soy sauce to it. And that's because the soy sauce that I'm using is a little bit diluted. Yeah, that's good. Cool. So I think we're about ready to start cooking. Yeah, the Asian grocer. Yeah, almost everything that I'm using you probably find at an Asian grocer. What's tricky, especially about the things that we're cooking with today, is that if you live in a Chinatown district, a lot of these things you won't find in Chinatown. So I have never seen sake or mirin. Actually, sake or mirin, I have never come across it in Chinatown. And I actually live in Chinatown in Brooklyn. And I've never come across either of those ingredients, and that's because in most Chinatown districts, they exclusively and only sell Chinese ingredients, which a lot of times is conflated with being like just a general Asian pantry grocer, but it actually is not true. It's almost exclusively Chinese ingredients, so super often I'll have really easy access to things like doubanjiang, which is a Chinese fermented bean paste, but I won't be able to find things like miso paste or gochujang, which in my opinion is actually a little bit more common than doubanjiang. But I actually can't find either of those things because Koreatown is clear across town for me. And miso paste, I don't even know where else to get miso paste other than Ranch 99, which is like a full 30-minute drive for me. So when I buy miso paste, I buy it in large quantities because I'm not near a Japanese grocery, not even remotely close to a Japanese grocery store. So Japanese ingredients are actually really hard for me to find. So lots of people ask me why I never, when I cook Japanese dishes, why I don't cook with Japanese soy sauce. And it's because honestly, it's really hard for me to find Japanese ingredients. Yeah. Low sodium, you could use more of that in your life. Yeah. I generally just like cooking with it. I actually, when I do things like pot stickers or dumplings or like dipping sauces, I still actually use full sodium soy sauce because it has like more flavor to it. But I love cooking with low sodium soy sauce, so you can be a little bit heavier handed with it. So we can use a full 4 tablespoons of soy sauce and then stop and taste it. And if it needs more, then you can add more. But if we were using full sodium soy sauce, you will always be running the risk of over seasoning really quickly. So. Is it true that soy sauce is overused in Western versions of Asian cuisine? I think it's overused in like some things, like outside of Chinese food. Oftentimes when I come across like Westernized like Thai food, for example, I frequently find the use of soy sauce, which is a little bit weird and like doesn't belong in those dishes. But I think like more commonly, at least here in like California, when I eat like really Americanized Chinese food. What I actually taste, if like, I'm not specifically talking about Panda Express, but like talking about like a lot of those like corner store bodega takeout Chinese dishes. Mostly what I taste is that it's using way too much spice and way too much MSG, which are both like often conflated with things that are salty, but it's actually not salty. It just has way too many things that make it umami. So it has this really extra savory quality about it that it's not how Chinese food is supposed to taste. It's meant to be like a more of a delicate approach to umami. And super often I'll see those qualities like turned all the way up to 11. So I'll have like huge waves of umami that are like just really aggressive, which is like still really tasty, but that's not what a lot of those dishes are meant to taste like. And definitely like a lot, especially here in California, where like in the Bay Area where people love spicy stuff, I see like extra spicy Chinese food that's not supposed to be that spicy, especially like even like Szechuan food, Szechuan food is supposed to be spicy, but in the Bay Area some of it is like borderline inedible, and like I don't know why it needs to be that spicy. It's basically inedible at a certain point. So anyway, that's my gripe about Chinese food. But that's I'm glad I got to air my grievances about American Chinese food. Cool. All right, so over on the stove, I'm heating up my wok here. We have like a nice good smoke going on our wok. I like to let it go a little bit past that point. But once it's nice and hot, we can start cooking. Meanwhile, hello to everyone just tuning in. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If this is your first time tuning in, we're here streaming every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST. If you're watching on Reddit, we're also live streaming on the YouTube channel at the bottom of the screen. That's also where I release all of the recipe videos. So what we're cooking today is a Japanese curry that uses white miso paste to get like a really interesting and rich umami quality about it. That recipe, it lives over on my YouTube channel, and I think it came out maybe a month or two ago. As a part of a whole series that I've been doing where I've been reproducing a lot of foods from the like San Francisco Bay Area food scene. So this one, it comes from, or pays homage to a curry that you can find at a cafe in San Francisco called Bazaar Cafe, which is actually owned by a friend of mine named Josh in Razan. And I think they still have the curry, but it's one of my favorite little curry spots, or little cafe spots. And I don't think they actually made the curry at that cafe. I think they made it like off-site and then had it brought in. But yeah, if you're looking for the recipes, that all lives over on my YouTube channel. So if you haven't checked those recipes out, definitely hop over to YouTube and check that stuff out. We're working our way to 3,500 subs by the end of the month. So if you want to help us hit the subscriber goal, bop over and check it out. What else? Yeah. Dr. Stonky Stonks, great username. Do I recommend a wok brand? So the wok that I'm using, it came from a restaurant supply store. I don't even think it has a brand. When I've tried to look a few times because people have asked me, and I have not been able to find a brand to it. What I mostly recommend is like the metal that it's made out of. So mine is made out of carbon steel, which has a really high heat potential. So that's really useful. I found that stainless steel or cast iron will also work. Anything that gets really hot. So mainly when people ask me about woks, I just tell them don't get a non-stick wok. Don't get anything made with Teflon because Teflon has a low heat point. So it will stop heating at a certain point. Which is actually what makes Teflon pans so good for scrambled eggs, because you can't overcook a scrambled egg in a Teflon pan because it won't get hot enough to overcook. But you cannot wok cook in a Teflon pan, so why would you try and wok cook in a Teflon wok? I don't understand that. So. But yeah, if you're looking for a good wok, I've heard a lot of good things about the Joyce Chen carbon steel wok. I haven't actually owned one before, but yeah. Cool. All right, let's start cooking. All right, so if you're not sure if your wok is hot enough, what we're looking for is all of this smoke coming off of the wok. That's really, really important. If you don't see this smoke, it probably means that your wok isn't hot enough and you need to hold off on your cooking. Usually what I like to do is wait for it to start smoking like this and let it go for like a good solid minute or two. But if you're still not certain, the other thing that we can do is get yourself a wooden utensil and put it in that oil. And when it gets in that oil, what you should see, you can kind of see it. Well, you can see it on YouTube in the high resolution, is all of those bubbles coming up around that spoon. And what that's a sign is that the oil is nice and hot. If you don't see that oil bubbling, it probably means that you don't have enough heat yet. All right. So I'm starting off, this is my garlic and my ginger going into the wok first. And then I'm going to let this bloom for just long enough until it's fragrant. I usually take about 10 seconds for that to bloom, but start using your nose at this point. When you start smelling garlic and ginger, that's a sign that you're generally ready. Next up is my chicken. You'll notice that I'm not just dumping the whole thing in though, so what I'm doing is holding back as much of the liquid in our marinade as possible. So that's not, I actually didn't do a great job today, but I generally like to hold back as much of that liquid as I can because it will help keep the temperature of my wok nice and hot. So the more liquid that you get in that wok, the more trouble you're going to have keeping it hot. So we probably don't need to worry about it too much today because we're not going to be adding too many things to our wok during the cook today. But that's especially important for like really, really ingredient heavy wok fries. So things like pad thai or like kung pao chicken, anything with a lot of ingredients to it. That's really, really important to make sure that you don't overwhelm that wok. Yeah. Yeah, cool. All right, so you'll notice that with my chicken that cornstarch is starting to do quite a bit of work for us. So the exterior of the chicken is cooking a lot slower than it normally would. So if we didn't have that cornstarch, the exterior of the chicken would basically be done cooking at this point. But because it has that nice cornstarch coating, the exterior is cooking a lot slower than it normally would, which is going to give the interior of our chicken a nice opportunity to finish cooking before we start moving on. Would I use corn flour to thicken the sauce? That would probably work fine. I've never tried it, but I think that would work fine. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work fine. Any kind of starch would work. So I see like a lot of Chinese places will use either cornstarch or potato starch. I've also seen tapioca starch used quite a bit. If you don't have any of those, you could probably just use AP flour and it would work fine too. All right. So our chicken, it's not fully cooked. We don't need it to be fully cooked because we're going to have a good long cook going on. But what I'm doing next is I'm adding my dry spices and I'm making sure that it has good contact with the wok at this point. So I'm pushing everything in my wok to one side and then I'm adding, that was 3 tablespoons of curry powder and half a tablespoon of turmeric powder. We're making sure that that has good solid contact with the bottom of the wok. And that's going to bloom out all of the aromatic qualities of our spices. All right. And now we're ready to add our liquids. So that was my sauce mixture plus my carrots and my potatoes going into the wok. And then I'm going to follow that up with about 2 cups of water. That was maybe more of an estimate than I should have, but pretty rough estimate. We don't need to be super exact with the amount of water that we add because what we're really looking to do is reduce here. So you'll probably see me, depending on how quickly those things cook, I may or may not even add more water just to make sure that things are cooking nice and evenly. All right, so then once things are all nice and combined, we're just trying to make sure that those potatoes are nice and submerged, and we're gonna let that start long cooking for, that will probably go for about 10, maybe 10, 15 minutes. If you're really committed at this point, that can long cook for 2 or 3 hours. If you want a really, really good curry, you could start this thing really, really early. You could start it at like 3 in the afternoon. And then let it long cook until like 6 or 7, and that's going to be really, really tasty. Just let it simmer for a super long time. I don't think I've ever done that. Maybe done it once, because I never start this curry early enough to really let that happen. So, but if you're really committed, you can absolutely let that thing long cook for a super long time, because everything that we've added now has enough density to it where it will withstand that really, really long cook time. Are you about to buy a wok? You haven't cooked in 5 months. Yeah, definitely get yourself a wok. That would be super cool. I love cooking in a wok. It's actually probably, I think I use the wok. My wok is probably one of 3 things in the kitchen that I use every day. Maybe not every day, probably like 6 days a week, 6 to 7 days a week. And then other than that, a good cast iron pan, a good cast iron skillet, and then a good stock pot. All 3 of those things are probably the big 3 that I use in my kitchen. So I would say is if you are looking to buy a wok, and you've never owned a wok before, I would always tell people to look for a flat bottom wok because it's going to feel most similar to like most of the frying pans that you've cooked in, because it will have like that nice flat bottom to it, so you'll be able to have this nice flat surface. So round bottom woks have an inherent challenge to it because it doesn't have a flat bottom, so it makes it like harder to get like even cooks going if you don't know how to wok toss properly. So that nice flat bottom will help you get a nice even sear, especially if you're trying to sear stuff. So it's going to feel a lot more familiar than if you're trying in a round bottom wok. It took me a couple weeks before I really got used to cooking in a round bottom wok. And I also owned like 3 or 4 flat bottom woks before I got this one. Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. The cornstarch tip for the chicken. Yeah, you'll find that like yeah, you'll find that the cornstarch, it comes up in like I would say is like cornstarch is probably the ingredient that comes up in almost all Chinese food, and probably lots of people don't even realize it that it's in all Chinese food because it has multiple uses that you'll find across like most Chinese dishes. Definitely anything that has a thick sauce base to it probably has a whole bunch of cornstarch in it. I like to compare, if you're familiar with Italian cooking, I compare it to how Italian cooking uses pasta water, where like pretty much any kind of Italian pasta that you're eating that has a creamy base to it is using pasta water, because the pasta water that you cook your pasta in, it has a whole bunch of starch that sheds off from it. And that starch is what you use to sort of like build really, really thick sauces. So like the key to building a really, really creamy carbonara sauce, it's not dairy. There's no dairy in a carbonara. It comes from the pasta water. So in Chinese food, we do a very, very similar thing, but instead of pasta water, you use cornstarch, which is actually what I was about to do. So yeah, I feel like lots of people don't realize it, but cornstarch, it's in almost all Chinese food. So while that's long cooking, that's actually what I'm going to get to right now, is I'm going to assemble my cornstarch slurry, which is exactly how it sounds. We're going to do tablespoons of cornstarch, and then what we're going to do is just dissolve it in some water. And then what we're going to do is add this at the end of our cook time, so towards the very, very end, right after we add those onions. And essentially all that we're trying to do is get this cornstarch to dissolve into a liquid substance. So when we add this to our wok, it's going to turn our whole stir fry into this really, really thick and creamy stir fry. Whereas prior to that, it's going to be pretty loose, pretty watery, and kind of just like, yeah, almost like soup-like. But that cornstarch is how you're going to tighten everything up. So if you've ever had Chinese food and it has like a really, really thick sauce base to it, it's always coming from the cornstarch. That's how it's done. The other use of cornstarch, kind of similar to how we used it in the marinade, as you'll frequently see meats coated in that cornstarch, especially if you come across like really crispy meats. So the thing that I think about a lot is Mongolian beef. That's how Mongolian beef is made, is using cornstarch. And I actually didn't realize this until I tried to figure out the recipe for Mongolian beef. But essentially what it's doing is it's a piece of flank steak that's coated in cornstarch and then seared. And part of what's searing is the cornstarch itself. So same thing, pretty conceptually the same thing that you're doing in a marinade. What you're essentially doing is slowing down the exterior cook so that you can get a nice quality sear going for the same reason. So. If fat bottom locks make the world go round, yeah. The cooking world. Totally. Cool. So we're gonna let this cook. Yeah, probably about 10, maybe 10, 15 minutes. Really what we're keeping an eye on at this point is we're making sure that our potatoes and our carrots get nice and tender. The other thing that you will notice is that I have not at any point added any salt yet. The only thing that I salted was our seasoning base, which was mostly just to taste them, so just a little pinch of salt. But to our long cook, there's no salt whatsoever. And that is really important anytime that you're cooking something that's going to reduce, like a curry. This is also true though for like bologneses, curries, any kind of like chilies, all of those things. Anything that's going to reduce over time. You want to hold off on salting that stuff, because if you salt it now and you salt it so that it tastes correct now, what will happen is it will start reducing, and then once it reduces, that salt is going to become a lot more condensed, and then you're going to have something that's too salty. So wait until it's finished condensing and reducing, and then try and season it. And then even sometimes at that point, once it's reduced, oftentimes I find that it actually doesn't need salt at all because it will reduce so much. So super important with your slow cooks. Wait until the end before you salt that stuff. In our case, though, I'm pretty sure this is going to need a little bit of salt because we're using so many potatoes. So there's only two things left to add to our curry while that slow cooks. The main thing that we have not yet added is our onions, and the last thing that we have not yet added is our cornstarch slurry. So right around the end, probably within the last 5 minutes of that cook, I'm gonna throw those onions in, and that will give us still like these nice crispy onions that are not like overcooked and like dissolved. Cool. Yeah. Yeah, oh yeah, I have. I break down the recipes in nice calming in a nice calming voice. I'm glad that my voice is calming. I have like, yeah, I've not been making those YouTube videos for very long. I think I started publishing them back in June. Actually, I started publishing them mid-COVID. So we're probably coming up on like the 1-year anniversary of the Wu Can Cook channel. And then like, if you go through like the like timeline of those videos, I think I started off talking way too fast because I talk really fast. I think I talk too fast on some of these scripts too. And then I started talking slower to like compensate for the fact that I realized that I was talking too fast in those videos. And then I discovered that I was talking too slow because like I was trying way too hard to talk slow. So it's weird, but if you track like the history, if you watch them chronologically, you'll find like first they start talking too slow, then too fast, and then a little bit slower. And then I think we've kind of like, over the last 3 or 4 videos, kind of hit this good stride of like, this is about like how fast I should be talking, I think. Which reminds me, hello to everyone just tuning in. If this is your first time tuning in, this is Wu Can Cook. We're here streaming every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST with new recipes. Those are out over on the YouTube channel every Friday. So last Friday we came out with the recipe for dan dan mian, which is a super fun one. We did a fried shallot dan dan mian. That came out on the channel last Friday. Friday before that, I think it was beef chow fun was the Friday before that. One before that was maybe chicken katsu. I might have those flipped. Every Friday, though, there's a new recipe video. The last one, the recipe from last week is a part of a series that we've been doing as a whole homage to the San Francisco Bay Area food scene, which is actually where this curry recipe comes from, also part of the San Francisco Bay Area food scene. Just sort of like recipes that are inspired by dishes that you'll find at a lot of places in the San Francisco Bay Area. So a lot of them come from Oakland, some of them come from San Francisco. This curry actually comes from a place in San Francisco called Bazaar Cafe. That's a really fun series to do because a lot of them are just places that I have eaten at a lot. The Bazaar Cafe is actually owned by a friend of mine, so it's fun to be able to like pay homage to a curry that I've been eating for like 10 years. So lots of fun stuff like that popping up over on the YouTube channel. There's another fun series, so I know that someone was mentioned. I forget who was mentioning. I think it was Key Lime Lover. I was talking about General Tso's chicken. So there's a whole series that I've been doing that's dedicated to reproducing Chinese American cuisines, so things that come from really, really Americanized Chinese food. So Key Lime Lover was talking a little bit earlier about General Tso's chicken, which I think was the very first recipe in that series that I did. And essentially what I did was reproduce the General Tso's chicken from Panda Express and kind of like took a look and broke down like what are the American qualities about that General Tso's chicken, and then took a look at what it would look like if I removed all of those American qualities and then just replaced them with things that actually come from traditional Chinese wok frying, which is really, really interesting with some dishes like General Tso's chicken, because a lot of those dishes, they don't actually come from Chinese food, they come from American food. And I'm pretty sure that General Tso's chicken, the history of General Tso's chicken, actually comes from diner food and like American diner food. Haven't watched it in a while, but the Search for General Tso is a really great documentary, which is actually the inspiration for that series. So a lot of fun stuff like that coming up. I think the General Tso's chicken that I had done, I used black bean sauce, which is a really, really common ingredient in a lot of like traditional Chinese food. But not super common in Chinese American food. I don't think I've ever seen black bean sauce in Americanized Chinese food. So that's a fun series. Lots of stuff like that coming up over on the YouTube channel. So if you're looking for stuff like that, that's coming up soon. This Friday coming up is going to be, I think it's bibimbap. We're coming out with bibimbap. Bibimbap or pad see ew, I can't remember. Pad kimao. I forget. There's something coming out this Friday. I'm pretty sure it's bibimbap, which is a Korean rice bowl, Korean barbecue rice bowl. And that's coming up this Friday. So if you're interested in stuff like that, definitely hop over to the YouTube channel and check some of that stuff out. New recipes out every Friday. We're working our way to 3,500 subs by the end of the month. So if you want to help us hit that subscriber goal, hop it up, check it out. Cool. Let's see, what else? Oh, this is slow cooking. I think that needs another like five minutes or so. What are we doing? Oh yeah, this Thursday. So this Thursday we're trying something. I actually mentioned or requested this on the YouTube channel, and I just thought it was a really fun idea, so I'm gonna try and do it. I posted a poll over on the YouTube channel. It was a poll with everything that's in my refrigerator. Some of it is really, really common stuff, so like carrots and chicken, stuff like that. But some of it is really weird. Actually, it's still really common, but things that don't belong in a lot of Chinese or Asian cuisine, so like Parmesan cheese, sour cream, things like that. I posted that list, and we're taking votes on things that you want me to put in a fried rice. So this coming Thursday, I'm going to cook that. I'm going to take requests for the things that you want me to put in a fried rice, and then we're going to make it. I'm going to figure out a recipe, and then we're going to figure out what to cook. I don't know how that's going to go. Hopefully we don't get too many weird things, but I think it's going to work. So I think that's going to be a really fun stream. So if you haven't yet, hop over to the YouTube channel and check out those polls and throw your votes in. Maybe don't vote for the various types of cheeses that are in my refrigerator, because I have no idea how to incorporate cheese into a fried rice. I didn't think that one through. So. Acrobatic bike. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, salt and pepper. Yeah, salt and pepper cod. That's on my to-do list for sure. I have to find a good source for cod first. I don't think that my grocer doesn't have super fresh cod. So when I find a really fresh cod, then I'm probably going to take a shot at it. But I also have not worked with cod super often. But that's definitely on my to-do list. Is some salt and pepper cod, for sure. Yeah, I know that you had requested that a little while ago, so that's definitely on my to-do list. It has made your can of soup not as appealing. Yeah, I actually love canned soup. Yeah, I used to eat canned soup from the corner store like all the time, because I would like come home really late from gigs and shows, and then like make dinner based off of things that you can get at a corner store. So it would be like a can of soup plus some like Cheetos and like an orange juice. Just like a weird thing, a bunch of things. All right, so I'm noticing right now that my curry is reducing a little bit quicker than I want it to, because my potatoes and carrots are not quite as tender as I'd like them to be. So I'm adding, that was a little bit more water. I think that was maybe a quarter cup of water. And that's just going to give us a little bit more cook time to get those potatoes and carrots really, really tender. Everything else is probably cooked at this point. That chicken is definitely cooked through. Everything else that's in our wok is probably ready to eat. But what we're waiting for is those potatoes and carrots to get a really, really nice tender interior, so that they're not like crunchy. So if you've ever had a curry where those potatoes, and you bite into the potato and it's a little bit like raw, it's not like the end of the world. You're not going to give yourself food poisoning from it. But to me, it's just like the worst thing that you can get in a curry is like a crunchy potato. So what we're waiting for is some nice tender pieces of potato and carrot. And once those are nice and tender, we can pull it off and we'll be ready to eat. The Queen Walk, yeah, for sure. 1,000 cans of soup, for sure. Oh yeah, Bista con papa. Oh yeah. Ooh, that might be a good inspiration. Actually, yeah, that's what. It's looking pretty likely that we're going to be putting potatoes into a fried rice. So I'm actually trying to like game plan how to incorporate that and figure out how to do that. And I was actually thinking of the like honey glazed potatoes that you get in a lot of Korean panchan, which is like the small dish appetizers that come in a lot of Korean barbecue. And I actually have no idea how those are made, but I'm gonna look into that, and that might actually end up being what I do for Thursday's stream. So I think that's gonna be a super fun stream. I'm really excited, and I hope we get weird things on those polls so I can try and figure it out. All right. Cool. Yeah. Oh yeah, Hermina. Yeah, I guess it is rather quiet on the YouTube side. Yeah, Hermina, thank you for reminding me. Over on YouTube, we're also taking donations. I never really asked for people to pay me for streaming. I don't really need to be paid for this. It's just something that I do for fun. But you may have noticed that a lot of the microphones have been crapping, especially the one on Reddit has been crapping out a lot lately. And that's because it's a really, really old microphone. I got it from a friend of mine who works at City Hall, and I'm pretty sure it's from the 90s. He said it was in the bin for things to throw out. So I think they were about to dump it, and he stole it from the dumpster. So if you want to help us raise money to replace this stupid mic, it's the one that if you've ever been watching the stream and the microphone just like stops working or it sounds like I'm underwater, that's because it's a crappy microphone. So over on YouTube, we're raising money to help replace that microphone. And I'm pretty sure we're close to that goal. I think we're like maybe 50, 60 bucks from replacing this microphone. So if you want to help us replace this mic, definitely check that out. That's over on YouTube, youtube.com/woocancook. And then I'm pretty sure the donate link is streamlabs.com/woocancook. Also on Venmo too, woocancook. Oh yeah, do you keep the potatoes firm or soft? Yeah, they always have firm potatoes. I think maybe it's like a preference thing. This might be a preference thing. I always go for like really, really soft potatoes. I like my potatoes like almost mashed potatoes, like close to being mashed potatoes, because I want to be able to like bite into it and not even really chew. That might actually be more mushy than most people like their potatoes. But I just like can't stand it when I bite into a piece of russet potato and it like has a crunch to it or has like a toothsome quality to it. I don't want that in my potatoes, but that might be a preference. This might be depending on like how you like your potatoes for sure. But yeah, I've not had any real problems with them turning to mush though. Unless you like, I'm pretty sure I have cooked this curry for like a long time. Like not 2 hours, but definitely like I've cooked it for like 45 minutes or so at one point. And they didn't turn mushy. They pretty much just like continue. They reach a certain point of tenderness, and then they just sort of stay there. Okay, what is my enjoyment ratio for enjoying your own cooking versus others enjoying your cooking? Yeah, probably like 50-50. I like cooking for people. Actually, what I miss most is like cooking for other people, and like having friends over and then cooking for them, which I used to do a lot before like the COVID shutdown happened. We do like dinner parties and stuff. But this has been like a weird like alternate reality way of cooking for other people, which is fun. I wish I could send it to you. Actually, what I have been doing, I can send it to you. If you do live in the San Francisco Bay Area, I can send you food now. That's I always forget. But if you haven't heard of shef.com, and you live in the San Francisco Bay Area, I can send you food now. It's a fun new thing that I've been doing. All right. Yeah, those are nice and tender. I'd say we're about 5 minutes shy of finishing with this cook, so I'm adding my onions in now. Followed by my cornstarch slurry. And you'll notice that as soon as I add this cornstarch, our whole curry is going to start tightening up. So it's going to go from like pretty loose and liquidy to a much more cohesive and like thick curry base. And that's all coming from the starch of our cornstarch. Cool. And now at this point, we're just waiting for our onions to sort of tenderize, and we should be ready to eat. Cornstarch, yeah. Yeah, I saw you mention corn flour a few times. I don't think that they're the same thing. I think corn flour, maybe? Yeah, I have this right. I'm pretty sure corn flour is the stuff that you get. I have a box of corn flour and I've only ever used it once, but it's the stuff that's coated underneath English muffins, and you also use it when you make pizza, and that might be the only 2 times that I have ever used corn flour. Not to be mistaken with masa, which is also a type of corn flour, and it's how you make corn tortillas. I have both. I don't really remember which one is which. Yeah. Cool. Oh, you fine dice them like, if you were making home fries. Yeah. Oh, with cheese as a garnish. That's what I was thinking. One thing I was thinking of is, yeah, like really, really fine slicing them and then like frying them in like the shallow bottom of the wok. Basically deep frying them, and then we get like really crispy bits or really crispy strips of, that would essentially be a potato chip. And then, something with the cheese. I haven't figured that out yet. I might do like a cheese crisp. If I end up using cheese, I might do a cheese crisp. Something. I'm not really sure. Yeah, cheese is really hard to work. That's the weird thing about Chinese food, is that there's very little to no dairy is ever involved in Chinese food. That's why so many Chinese people, or so many Asians, are lactose intolerant. Is because you never ever see. Because you very rarely, if ever, will see Chinese food cooked with like milk, or in this case like dairy, cheese, stuff like that. So trying to figure out a use for cheese is going to be really interesting. The other thing I was thinking of is that it does actually come up a little bit in like Korean American bar food with a thing called, I think it's literally called cheese corn, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's corn that's like skillet fried in mozzarella cheese. And that's the other thing, the other Yeah, baked. Yeah, bake the cheese. Yeah, exactly. So it's basically baked cheese. That's the only other instance that I can think of using cheese in Asian food. But other than that, I don't know what else to use it for. I'm gonna have to figure it out. I think it's gonna be really fun and interesting. Yeah, you like the potatoes to be pretty soft for sure. Same for the carrots too. Cool. I forgot to mention this, but I added a little bit more water because my curry was tightening up a little bit more than I'd like it to. Probably because we used a little bit more cornstarch than I should have. But that's okay though. If you notice that it's tightening up a little bit too much, just add a little bit more water. And you're there. I think this is about there. Yeah. All right, finally I'm adding a little bit of salt. More than a little, actually. This is quite a bit of salt. It's about 2 pinches of kosher salt. And I think that's going to do it. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So we're checking a few things. Those potatoes are nice and tender. The potatoes are nice and tender, so are the carrots, but also we're checking the salinity of our overall curry now that we've reached the final reduced stage of our curry. We definitely do not want to check or add any salt prior to that point because if you add salt before that point, it might continue to reduce and then you're going to end up over-salting your curry, which is pretty much the worst thing that you can do is an over-salted curry. All right, last thing I'll mention, I've kind of learned this the hard way, but if you can, you want to try and avoid putting this in any glassware that's white, because curry powder will definitely start staining stuff. So here's my curry. I'm putting it in a brown bowl. Or if you put it in any kind of even white porcelain, I have a bowl that's white ceramic that I like to put in a lot. Either of those things, they're going to stain, and then you're going to have a hell of a time getting that curry, that yellow stain of curry out of that, and it's going to be really annoying. Yeah, those potatoes are perfect. Still a little bit toothsome, which I think is right at the point of where I like them to be. They might even, if we had done that with a long cook, they might have actually passed that point a little bit, which would still have been okay. But they're a little bit toothsome, but still you can sort of that point where a potato, you can hold it in your mouth and basically mash it up with your tongue. It's that that close to being mushy, but still whole enough where it's not really falling apart. So we still have these nice independent pieces of potato that you can actually even pick up with chopsticks. Also, the chicken is nice and tender, so it has this nice crisp exterior to it from that cornstarch, but still has this nice tender interior that kind of withstood that long cook too. So one of my favorite parts about using chicken in a curry is that it has this nice long time. So that thing boiled in that curry for a whole 20 minutes or so. It has this nice long cook time. Super important though, I almost forgot to do this. But the last thing that we want to do when you finish, this is especially important with long cooks like this, is we want to remove everything from our wok. We don't want to leave this in our wok because if it stays in the wok, it's eventually going to start carbonizing. So as soon as anything starts cooling down in carbon steel, you're going to end up in a world where things start sticking to the wok, which is not where we want to be. So before things start sticking to it, let it get out of the wok and then clean it. So this is super, super important. While your wok is hot, it has a nice non-stick surface to it. So this is super, super tempting to do, especially if there's finished food in front of you. But this is also something that lots of people will probably be in the habit of doing if you've ever cooked stuff in a stock pot, for example, where you'll finish cooking and then just serve out of the stock pot and then leave the stock pot on the stove. You don't want to do that in in a curry, especially in a carbon steel wok like this, because if you leave that stuff in the wok, what will happen is it's eventually going to start sticking to the wok. So while it's hot, you still have this nice non-stick surface to the wok, so things will start coming right off. I didn't scrub it. All I did was rinse it off, and pretty much everything, I would say like 90% of everything came off, with maybe like last little bits of stuff that I'm kind of wiping off with that paper towel. And then what we're doing is we're just going to reheat it and let that kind of clean up on its own. That's all you really need to do for good wok care. But most importantly, don't leave anything in your wok while it's starting to cool down, because once it cools down, then you're going to start damaging the carbon steel if you let it cool down. Art's DP. Did I put ginger in the curry? Yeah. So that was the first two things that we did, was ginger and garlic. So those were the very first two things. You'll probably actually find in almost every savory recipe dish that I've ever done. I can only think of maybe one dish where I didn't use ginger and garlic. You will find that ginger and garlic are probably the first two things that I'll do. Because they kind of like bloom out aromatic qualities that work really, really well. And anytime that we're dealing with like flavors of umami, so if you're working with like things like soy sauce or miso paste in this case, really, really important, or like sake. Today we used oyster sauce. All of those things that are going to pair really, really well with that garlic and ginger. So super often they will, pretty much every stream, every time that you'll see me streaming, those will be the very first two things that I'll do. Is I'll crush and then mince 4 cloves of garlic, and then fine mince about a tablespoon's worth of ginger. Yeah. Hey, Ham Charles back. Cool. And it's working on YouTube too. For those who have not seen Ham Charo, that's Ham Charo. Ham Charo is the hungry hamster that's eating ramen. Ham Charo only gets to eat when you feed him. So if you don't subscribe, Ham Charo doesn't get to eat. So please feed Ham Charo and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Yeah. Oh yeah, oil. Thank you. Thank you, Hermina. Good reminder. Almost forgot, yeah. The last thing that we want to do anytime that we finish cooking in a wok, Hermina knows because she has watched the stream so many times, is that we want to add a little bit of oil, just like a carbon steel, or it's just like a cast iron pan. We want to coat everything in a little bit of oil, so this is only like maybe a single tablespoon of oil. And that's just to prevent things from starting to rust, which means that we need to do that not just at the cooking surface. We need to do it with anything that's coated in carbon steel, which is, in this case, my wok is literally an entire piece of carbon steel, so we want to coat everything in it. If you're really committed, you probably even want to do that on the handle. I don't actually do that because I just don't feel like taking the handle covering off. But if you're really committed, you really want to prevent rust from forming even the handle, anything that's covered in carbon steel. We do a similar thing with cast iron pans too. I'm so glad that Ham Charo is working again. That's like the best little hamster. He's so awesome. Cool. Yeah. Cool. Thanks everyone for tuning in. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If you haven't met Ham Charo yet, Ham Charo is the hamster that only gets to eat when people subscribe to my YouTube channel. So if you want to feed Ham Charo, he's very hungry. We're working our way to 3,500 subscribers by the end of the month, so if you want to help us hit that subscriber goal, please feed Ham Charo. He's super, super hungry. Over on the YouTube channel, that's where all of the recipe videos live, so pretty much anything that you'll ever see me cooking on stream has a recipe video that goes along with it. The things that I'm cooking are probably things that I've done recipe videos for almost all the time. So the recipe for this Japanese curry actually came out, I think that was last month. And it lives over on the YouTube channel. Those are out every Friday, so last Friday we came out with a recipe for a really, really pantry-friendly dandan mian, which is like a sesame paste noodle dish that comes from Szechuan cuisine. Friday before that, I think we did egg foo young was the one before that. I can't remember. And then the Friday before that, I think, was Japanese chicken katsu, and then beef chow fun was there at some point. Those are out every Friday. I can't remember everything that I've cooked now. So if you're interested in stuff like that, definitely hop over to the YouTube channel. Check that stuff out. Probably the series, there's a couple of series that are in progress right now. The one that probably lots of people are really excited about is the Chinese American Hack series, where I've been kind of hacking my way through a lot of like really Americanized, iconic Americanized dishes. So things like General Tso's chicken and honey sesame chicken, Kung Pao chicken, generally like a lot of stuff from the Panda Express menu. And kind of taking a look at what it would look like to reproduce those dishes without the American qualities. Taking a look at like what is General Tso's chicken in the lens of like traditional wok cooking, and like how is that going to taste. So that's a really fun series that we've been doing. So if you're interested in stuff like that, definitely hop over to the YouTube Please Feed Ham Charo and give it a subscribe. Yeah, oh yeah, the last thing I'll mention, so this coming Thursday, so in 2 days, so we're not streaming tomorrow, but on Thursday we're going to be doing a stream based off of the ingredients that you guys have picked. So over on the YouTube channel in the community tab, there's a whole poll. I think there's 4 separate polls because it wouldn't let me do them all in one poll. And I've been taking a poll of like, that has a list of all of the ingredients that's in my refrigerator, almost all of them, not all of them, but almost all of them. And I've been taking requests on what are the things that you want to see me put in a fried rice. So this coming probably the end of day tomorrow, I'm going to put together a recipe and try and figure out how to put those things into a single dish, which is what we were talking about a little bit earlier. Some of the things in the refrigerator are pretty common, so things like bacon and chicken and stuff like that. But some of them come from like not Chinese food. They're things that I use in like when I cook Italian food, or just like things for breakfast. There's like oatmeal and like almond milk, stuff like that. And we're going to try and figure out, I'm going to take the top 5 things that you guys have voted for, and then I'm going to put them all in fried rice, and we're going to see what happens. And I'm going to try and figure out how to make it tasty. I'm probably going to figure out how to make it tasty, I think. Cool. There's Ham Charo. He's working. I'm so glad that he's working. I've been trying to fix Ham Charo for like 5 months. So cool. All right. Thank you all for tuning in. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. We'll be back on Thursday doing some kind of fried rice that you tell me to cook. And then this coming Friday, I believe, is going to be pad ki mao, which comes from Thai food. Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you soon. Bye.
You're as warm smooth as Tennessee whiskey. You're as sweet as strawberry wine. You're bad, warm as a glass of brandy. Darling, I'll stay stoned on your love all the time.
Slow. If you come over and start up a conversation with just me, then trust me, I'll give it a chance. Now take my hand, stop, put Ben the Man on the jukebox, and then we start to dance. Now I'm singing like, girl, you know I want your love. Your love was handmade for somebody like me. Come on now, follow my lead. I may be crazy, don't mind me, said boy. Let's not talk too much. Grab on my waist and put that body on me. Come on now, follow my lead. Come on now, follow my lead.
I'm in love with the shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet do. Although my heart is falling too, I'm in love with your body. night you were in my room, and now my bed sheets smell like you. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with the shape of you.
One weekend we let the story begin. We're going out on our first date. You and me are thrifty, so go all you can eat. Fill up your bag and I fill up a plate. We talk for hours and hours about the sweet and the sour and how your family is doing okay. We'll even get in a taxi, we'll kiss in the backseat, tell the driver make the radio play. Now I'm singing like, girl, you know I want your love. Your love was handmade for somebody like me. Come on now, follow my lead. I may be crazy, don't mind me. You said, boy, let's not talk too much. Grab on my waist and put that body on me. Come on now, follow my lead. Come on now, follow my lead.
I'm in love with the shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet do. Although my heart is falling too. I'm in love with your body. And last night you were in my room, and now my bed sheets smell like you. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with the shape of you.
Come on, be my baby, come on. 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 Come on, be my baby, come on.
I'm in love with your body. Every day discovering something brand new.
Ta cũng bình thường.